The chainsaw roared like a beast, spitting sawdust into the air, and my heart stopped. My tree, my ancient oak that had stood longer than this entire neighborhood, was leaning, wobbling, and right there, standing smug with folded arms, were the two Karen sisters who had ordered it cut. Finally, the older one sneered, her sunglasses flashing in the noon sun. "That ugly old thing is ruining our property values." Couldn't even breathe. Property values. Did they even hear themselves? That oak wasn't just a tree. It was history. It was shelter, shade, memory. It was where my father proposed to my mother under lanterns strung through its branches. It was where we buried my dog, Scout, whose little plaque still sat at the roots. And yet, here they were, Karen and her younger sister Tammy, acting like neighborhood queens, like they had the right to erase my life in broad daylight. "Stop! You can't do this," I shouted, running across the yard, my shoes slipping in the grass. The worker with the chainsaw paused, eyes darting nervously between me and the sisters. Karen snapped her fingers. "Don't listen to him. We have homeowners association authorization." Oh, God, that word again. Homeowners association. It was their shield, their sword, their twisted badge of honor. How many times had I heard them wield it to bully others? Too many. I held my breath, glaring. Authorization? From who? You don't even sit on the board. Tammy smirked, brushing her highlighted hair off her shoulder. "We influence the board." Same thing. The saw growled back to life. My stomach twisted. "No, not like this." I stepped forward, right in front of the trunk, arms spread wide. "Touch this tree and you'll regret it." My voice cracked, anger vibrating in my chest. The worker froze. The saw choked and died again. Silence, except for the rustling leaves above me, almost like the tree itself was whispering, "Don't let them win." Karen hissed like I just insulted her bloodline. "Oh, for God's sake. You're ridiculous. That thing is diseased, dangerous, a liability." "It's perfectly healthy," I snapped. "You just hate it because it drops acorns on your driveway." Tammy rolled her eyes. "Exactly. They dent my Lexus." I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "So you're destroying a 150-year-old oak over car dings?" Karen's lips curled. "Over control. You're too stubborn to follow rules. This neighborhood is ours to keep tidy." And then, in one motion, she snatched the chainsaw from the worker's hands. "Fine. If no one else has the guts, I'll do it myself." "Karen, no." The engine screamed alive again. The teeth of the blade tore into the bark, sending chips flying like sparks. My chest heaved. Every crack, every groan of that tree felt like a wound tearing open in me. Neighbors began gathering at their porches. Phones out, some whispering, others gasping. Nobody dared intervene, because who wanted to cross the Karen sisters? They thrived on fear. I felt powerless, until a thunderous snap echoed like a gunshot. The trunk splintered, the oak groaning, tilting, its massive weight shifting in the wrong direction. "Karen, move!" I screamed. Too late. The tree, as if claiming its vengeance, buckled not toward my house, not toward the street, but straight back toward hers. The sight was surreal. The giant oak crashed down like a collapsing cathedral, its branches slamming through Karen's pristine white picket fence, flattening her flower beds, smashing into the hood of Tammy's Lexus with a metallic crunch. Glass shattered. A mailbox folded like paper. Screams rose up from the crowd. Karen dropped the chainsaw, stumbling backward, her sunglasses flying off. For the first time in forever, her face wasn't smug. It was pale, twisted in panic. The ground trembled. The oak's largest limb drove right through her porch railing, splintering wood like matchsticks. Her house shook, shutters rattling. And then, silence. The only sound left was Karen's ragged breathing and Tammy's high-pitched shriek as she ran to her car, now buried under branches. I stood there, chest heaving, trembling between horror and something darker. Satisfaction. Was this justice? Or punishment too cruel? Karen spun toward me, hair tangled, eyes wild. This is your fault. My jaw dropped. Mine. You ordered it cut. Her voice cracked, shrill. You should have stopped me. That broke me. I laughed. Loud. Hollow. Ugly. I tried. Everyone saw me try. You wouldn't listen. A neighbor across the street shouted. She's right, Karen. You brought this on yourself. Another chimed in. Finally. Karma. Karen's face burned red as whispers spread through the gathering crowd. Phones still recording. I could see it. The cracks in her empire. The fear in her sister's eyes. The control slipping through her clenched fists. Tammy muttered, "My car, my poor car," and collapsed against the curb, sobbing. Karen whirled on me again, but her fury sputtered. I'll sue you. I'll sue the homeowners association. I'll sue the tree service." But her threats sounded hollow, like broken glass rattling in a jar. The workers had already backed away, shaking their heads, murmuring about liability waivers and not our fault. And me, I just exhaled. Finally, like I'd been holding my breath for years. The oak lay across her property like a fallen guardian, taking her arrogance down with it. But the twist wasn't over, because as police sirens wailed closer, weaving through the neighborhood, Karen suddenly dropped to her knees, clutching her ankle. Oh, I'm hurt. He attacked me. She pointed at me, eyes wide, voice trembling with fake victimhood. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My stomach dropped. No, she wouldn't dare. Oh, give me a break. A neighbor yelled. We all saw what happened. Phones lifted higher, lenses catching every detail. The officer who stepped out of the cruiser looked grim, scanning the chaos, the broken car, the ruined porch, the crowd of witnesses. His eyes finally landed on me, then on Karen, still clutching her ankle like some tragic actress. Sir, he said, voice calm but firm. What happened here? I swallowed hard, pulse pounding. Before I could speak, 3 neighbors stepped forward. She did it, one woman said, pointing at Karen. We recorded everything. She took the saw. She cut the tree. Another added. He tried to stop her. She wouldn't listen. The officer's brow furrowed. Karen's mouth opened and closed, her face turning blotchy. They're lying. They're all against me. The officer shook his head. Ma'am, multiple videos confirm their account. You'll need to come with us to file a full statement. Tammy wailed. But the Lexus. Ma'am, the officer sighed. That's evidence now. And in that moment, standing in the ruins of her self-made chaos, Karen's power finally cracked. She wasn't feared anymore. She was pitted, ridiculed, recorded for the world to see. As they escorted her toward the cruiser, the crowd erupted, not in applause, but in murmurs, in laughter, in quiet relief. The spell was broken. I stood still, one hand pressed to the fallen bark of my tree, the other clenched at my side. My heart ached. It would never stand tall again. But somehow, in its fall, it had delivered justice sharper than any courtroom could. And isn't that the cruelest irony? That, in trying to destroy it, Karen destroyed herself. The oak may have fallen, but so had her empire of intimidation. And I swear, as I turned away, I heard the faintest creak of branches, almost like a sigh of relief. Thank you for staying with me through this wild ride. If you loved this dramatic takedown of Karen chaos, don't forget to hit like, Subscribe to the channel and join me for more jaw-dropping justice stories every week. They threw a party in my pool at my house without asking, without warning, and without even knowing I was watching the whole damn thing from the upstairs window. Yeah, that happened. And by the end of it, I didn't just kick the Karen sisters out, I got a court order that had their butts evicted. Let me back up a sec. It was a blistering Saturday in July, the kind of day when the sun fries your skin before you even make it to your mailbox. I had been out of town on a work retreat. I am a regional manager for an engineering firm. Nothing fancy, but it pays well and keeps me on the road. So when I pulled into my driveway that afternoon, I was just hoping for a cold beer, a quiet house, and maybe a few lazy laps in my backyard pool before calling it a night. Instead, I found 6 SUVs parked in front of my house. Music was thumping like a nightclub. Laughter echoed from the backyard. And when I opened my front door, God help met, here were wet footprints all over my hardwood floors and a bikini-clad stranger coming out of my bathroom like she owned the place. My jaw damn near hit the tile. "Hey, you must be Derek's friend," she said, brushing past me without a care in the world. Who the hell is Derek? I followed the noise to the back past the kitchen, which now smelled like someone spilled half a gallon of tequila on the counter, out to the patio. And that's when my brain short-circuited. There, floating in my pool, under my string lights, drinking from my personal whiskey stash, was the HOA president's daughters, the Karen sisters, Savannah and Madison, along with at least a dozen of their trust fund clones doing synchronized cannonballs and dumping sunscreen into the water like it was tanning oil at Coachella. "Excuse me?" I barked, louder than I meant to, but who wouldn't lose their mind? Savannah turned around, visibly annoyed, like I'd interrupted her Zen yoga retreat. "Oh, hey. We thought you were going to be gone another few days." My eye twitched. "You thought? You broke into my house, hosted a rager in my backyard, and you thought I wouldn't mind?" She rolled her eyes like I was being unreasonable. "Chill. We're on the HOA. The community has access to shared amenities. Isn't that what you said in the last meeting?" No, it is not," I hissed. "This isn't a shared pool. This is my private property. That fence you climbed? That's the legal line. This ain't a damn Marriott." Then get this, Madison chimed in with, "Well, technically, the HOA bylaws grant communal rights to neighborhood green spaces and recreation zones, and your backyard meets the landscape coverage threshold." Oh hell no. This is where I should tell you. I'm not just some guy with a pool and a short fuse. I'm also the guy who designed the legal easement plans for half the lots in this subdivision. I know every inch of what counts as communal property and what doesn't. My pool? Not even close. But they didn't know that. Instead, Savannah called me hostile, said she was feeling unsafe, and had the audacity to dial 911 on speaker, hoping to get me arrested. In my own home. Couldn't believe it. I just stood there, soaked in chlorine mist, watching her give the dispatcher a sob story about being harassed by an angry homeowner. For a split second, I thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe this was just a dream and I'd wake up to the smell of leftover pizza and peace. But no. The dream turned into a nightmare real quick. When the officers arrived, yes, 2 patrol cars for a fake emergency. I calmly explained the situation, handed over my property deed, and even played security footage from my door cam. And when Savannah tried to argue some made-up HOA access clause, I handed the officers a flash drive. You see, while she was organizing unauthorized house parties, I'd been collecting evidence. They didn't know I'd already filed multiple complaints to the city zoning board. They didn't know I'd installed infrared motion cameras after the last mystery footprints incident. And they definitely didn't know that the only reason I'd left town for 3 days was because I was attending a private arbitration hearing about this exact kind of HOA overreach. Yeah. Plot twist. See, the HOA had been trying to slowly creep into private properties through vague reinterpretations of easement boundaries. It was their little trick to turn more areas into shared space without actually acquiring ownership. I found out when they sent a letter last month about possibly converting my lot into dual-use recreation due to underutilization. So, I sued them. That hearing, it ended with the judge siding with me. And not only that, the court issued an injunction prohibiting any member of the HOA from entering my property without my written permission. And that's when I smiled. "Officers," I said, "you may want to see this." I pulled out a copy of the court order, still warm from the courthouse copier. "They're in direct violation. That means they're trespassing." The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "And this was issued when?" "Yesterday," I said. "Stamped by Judge Wilcox." The radio buzzed. The officers took one look at the order. Then at Savannah, still dripping wet and clinging to her pineapple flotion, you could see it dawn on her. "Oh crap, this is real." The next 10 minutes were pure gold. The Karen sisters were asked to vacate immediately. Their guests scrambled out of the pool like cockroaches in the light. Someone tried to take a bottle of my bourbon and got politely but firmly told, "Put that down." And then came the part that still makes me laugh. Madison, standing on my lawn wrapped in a beach towel, had the nerve to scream, "You'll regret this. We run this neighborhood." I leaned against the porch rail, cool as ever, and said, "Not anymore. You just got served." Literally. Because what they didn't know, Wasami attorney was already filing for emergency eviction from their mother's home. Why? Because the property was under dispute for improper registration under a fraudulent trust to bypass HOA conflict of interest laws. That's right. Turns out their mommy had illegally transferred property to her daughters under a Shell LLC registered Toget Tisan expired P.O. box in Nevada. So I reported it. By the end of the week, the court ruled in my favor. Fraud, conflict of interest, HOA violation, you name it. A marshal showed up 2 days later with a notice of eviction and removed the Karen sisters from their so-called inherited residence. No more surprise pool parties. No more fake HOA law lectures. And definitely no more margarita fountains erupting in my living room. When the dust settled, the neighborhood changed. A few other homeowners came forward with complaints about HOA overreach that had gone ignored. The President Savannah and Madison's mother resigned in disgrace. And I got elected to the new interim board. I rebuilt the HOA charter from the ground up. Simple rules. Transparent budgets. No weird gray areas or fake fines. And most importantly, every homeowner got full legal clarity on their property boundaries. In writing. The Karen sisters? Last I heard, they tried to throw another party in someone else's pool in another neighborhood. And got arrested for trespassing. Karma, folks. So if you're ever wondering if the quiet guy down the street with the blueprints and a calm smile is harmless, think again. Sometimes he's just waiting for the right moment to take your whole house of cards and knock it into the damn pool. What would you have done if it were your house? Would you have called the cops or the court? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like if karma hit just right. And don't forget to subscribe for more neighborhood justice served cold. I didn't think 2 women could make my blood boil that fast, but damn, the Karen sisters did it. I never thought I'd say this, but throwing hands didn't seem so far-fetched when I saw my son's insulin floating in the pool. Floating like trash. And they had the audacity to laugh? My breath caught in my throat. "Oh my God," I whispered, heart thudding in my chest as I scrambled toward the backyard. The insulin vials bobbed gently near a flamingo float destroyed. My son, 13, diabetic since he was 4, stood frozen by the sliding door, his knuckles white against the glass. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I shouted, spinning around to face the grinning demons in designer sunglasses. The older one, I think her name was Sandra, tilted her head with that smug little tilt only true Karen's master. "Relax," she said, flicking her wrist like she was dismissing an annoying gnat. "That stuff was medicine, right? It didn't belong in the fridge with the sangria. We didn't know it was important." "You didn't know it was important?" My voice cracked. I wanted to scream. It had a medical label. It was in a clearly marked box. "Emergency insulin, do not touch." I jabbed a finger toward the cooler, now half empty and stinking of chlorine. The younger sister Mallory, I think, sucked her teeth. "Girl, calm down. No one told us there was a kid with issues in the house. You should have said something." That's when my husband stepped outside. He had just come back from a grocery run, carrying a bag of hot dog buns and lemonade. When he saw the pool and my face, he stopped cold. What happened? His voice was low. Too low. I pointed, my voice shaking. Tossed Ethan's insulin in the pool. It's all ruined. He looked at Ethan, who was now pale, sweating, barely blinking. His lips were dry. My husband dropped the bag on the concrete. Get in the car, he said to me. Calmly but with an edge that made even Sandra flinch. Take him to the ER. Now, I'll deal with them. My stomach flipped. Ethan needed insulin fast. I scooped him up by the arm and led him to the car, trying to soothe him. We'll get you to the hospital, baby. Just hang in there. You're okay. You're okay. I'll never forget the silence on that drive. Just Ethan's shaky breathing and the sound of my tires humming against the road. Not a word. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they cramped. When we arrived, the ER staff moved fast. Thank God. Within minutes, they had him on 4 fluids and stabilized. One nurse shook her head and whispered, "If you were even 30 minutes later." I nearly collapsed. Back at home, my husband wasn't playing games. When I returned later that evening, the Karen sisters were gone, but the damage was far from over. My husband was pacing, his jaw tight. They said it was a mistake, he said bitterly. They refused to apologize, said we were overreacting and that they felt attacked. You believe that crap? I just stared at him. Did you call the police? He hesitated. I did. They said we could file a report. But honestly, I want more than that. So we filed. Not just for property damage, no. This wasn't about money. This was endangerment. And when the officer saw the photos I'd taken insulin ruined in the pool, Ethan's hospital report, the labeled emergency cooler, he nodded slowly. Yeah, this might rise to felony territory. Good. A week later, we got a knock on the door. Detective Ramos, a no-nonsense woman with a notebook and a tired smile, came to take a formal statement. So these 2 women knowingly discarded prescription medicine required to sustain your son's life? Yes, I said, hands folded tightly in my lap. They admit this? They bragged about it, laughed at us, said we should have warned them. She paused, jotted something down, then asked, "And your son? Do you have his diagnosis? Medical documentation?" "Oh, we have everything. We've kept records since he was 4. He's got type 1 diabetes, insulin dependent. Missing even 1 dose can cause him to go into diabetic ketoacidosis." That got her attention. That's life-threatening. Yes. She looked up. Okay, that's all I needed. We'll be in touch. And they were. Turns out, this wasn't the first time the Karen sisters had crossed a line. Mallory had a prior incident, tried to snatch a parking spot from a disabled vet and screamed racial slurs when she got called out. Sandra had a reputation at the country club for flipping tables over wrong wine pairings. Class acts, both of them. But this? Endangering a child? That was a whole new level. 3 weeks later, they were both charged with felony reckless endangerment of a minor. When the summons hit their mailbox, I heard from a neighbor the scream Mallory let out echoed down the block. "They're pressing charges?" she wailed. "Yes, Karen. Yes, we are." They tried to play it off. Claimed it was a misunderstanding. Went on Facebook and wrote a sob story about being vilified for an honest mistake. Oh, and of course they blamed me. This is what happens when people don't label things properly. We're the victims of cancel culture. I couldn't help but laugh. Cancel culture? Lady, this is consequence culture. Then came the court date. The courtroom was ice cold, both in temperature and in energy. You could feel the tension crackling like static in the air. Mallory showed up in a skin-tight pantsuit 2 sizes too small, looking smug. Sandra wore oversized sunglasses inside like she was shielding herself from justice. They still thought they were walking out of there with nothing but a slap on the wrist. The judge, an older man with sharp eyes and no patience for games, wasn't buying any of their performance. He listened as our attorney laid out the timeline, the medical records, the photo evidence, the hospital report. Everything was crystal clear. There was no gray area. They knew what they were doing when they tossed that insulin. They were told. They chose to be cruel. When Ethan took the stand, I swear the room held its breath. I felt dizzy. Couldn't see right. My hands were shaking. I was scared, he said, voice small but steady. I knew I needed my insulin, but it was gone. Even the stenographer stopped typing for half a beat. And then it was Mallory's turn. She flipped her bleached hair and sneered. We're not doctors. How were we supposed to know he'd almost die? There it was. That moment the courtroom shifted. Even the Karen sisters' attorney buried his face in his hands. The judge leaned forward, voice calm and heavy. You weren't required to be doctors. You were required to be decent human beings. You failed. Verdict: guilty. Both charged with felony reckless endangerment and court-ordered to pay restitution. Fines, community service, and a civil lawsuit? Oh, it's coming. We've already filed. They'll be drowning in legal fees for months, if not years. As the gavel slammed down, Mallory burst into tears, the loud, messy kind that isn't about remorse but regret for being caught. Sandra cursed under her breath, but nobody cared anymore. Their power, their entitlement, their fake smiles? Gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. My son held my hand and looked up at me. Do we have to see them again? I smiled softly. No, baby. This chapter's closed. But for them, this was just the beginning of their downfall. Actions have consequences. Karma doesn't miss sometimes. She just waits for the perfect time to strike. And if you thought this story was wild, you won't believe what happened in our next lawsuit story. Hit that subscribe button on my YouTube channel so you don't miss a single twist. She thought she was untouchable. She mocked our uniforms, sneered at my badge, and called me just a tenant with toys. But she had no idea the garage she used to stash her counterfeit handbag empire was already surrounded by my team. I'll never forget the look on her face when the truth slammed into her like a freight train. It started a month ago. I had just moved into a quiet cul-de-sac in a seemingly upscale HOA-controlled neighborhood in Arlington, Virginia. Neatly trimmed lawns, porch flags, retirees walking tiny dogs looked like a brochure. But beneath the perfect hedges and white fences, oh man, snake's nest. My job? I'm a federal officer with Homeland Security. Specifically, I work with a covert SWAT unit focused on illegal trade networks, mostly high-end counterfeit trafficking that funds darker things. When I'm off duty, I keep a low profile. People usually assume I'm a security contractor or gym coach. I let them think that. But Karen, God help me, this woman decided she needed a personal vendetta. She was the self-appointed neighborhood queen, president of the HOA, and, apparently, the final word on who was allowed to breathe within 3 blocks of her McMansion. Blonde bob, neon workout outfits, and a clipboard that never left her side. She knocked on my door the first day I was unloading boxes. Excuse me? We don't allow tenants to leave military-looking gear in plain view. It unsettles the community. I blinked. It's not military gear. That's just a Pelican case with my camera equipment. She eyed it like it was ticking. Well, we do require advance notice if you're renting the property. Who's the owner? It's mine, I said, calm but direct. She paused. You could see her internal software crashing. You own? Her eyes narrowed. That's surprising. I forced a smile. Have a nice day. That should have been it. But no, Karen didn't stop. Within the week, I'd gotten 3 HOA notices. Grass too long? It was 3 inches. Mailbox not regulation height? It was. And me favorite unfamiliar vehicle in the driveway. It was my own car. I didn't engage. I'm trained to observe. And trust me, something smelled off. Karen's house had a constant stream of unmarked delivery vans, always late at night. Men unloading boxes, rarely talking. I counted at least 9 different license plates. None local. One night, I heard a thud behind the row of garages. I slipped out with my flashlight and caught 2 guys lifting boxes from a truck into Karen's garage. When I stepped out of the shadows, they froze. Lost? I asked casual. They bolted. The next morning, Karen marched down my driveway. What exactly do you think you're doing wandering around at night? She snapped. That's harassment. I tilted my head. Just making sure everything's safe. Her eyes flared. Keep your paranoia inside your little bunker, Rambo. We're a community, not a war zone. That was it. I ran the plates from my driveway camera footage. Everyone was tied to flagged shell companies we'd been tracking for months linked to counterfeit luxury goods funding cybercrime overseas. The kicker? Our analysts cross-referenced shipment paths and confirmed it. Karen's house was a drop site. Oh, the irony. The woman who weaponized HOA bylaws was neck-deep in international crime. We got a warrant, but this wasn't a regular bust. We needed to catch her in the act: inventory, distribution, communication. So we staged a blackout drill in the neighborhood under the guise of emergency preparedness training, with HOA blessing. Karen signed off without reading. We moved in that Friday night. 5 of us in full gear, stashed inside her garage crawlspace, sensors rigged, body cams on. I had to hold my breath when she walked in, wearing a silk robe and barking into her Bluetooth. No, idiot, Balenciaga doesn't go in the green boxes. Those are Dior knockoffs. Jesus, do I have to do everything? She started opening crates, checking serial numbers, tagging fakes like a factory boss. Then get this, she paused, looked around, and said out loud, I swear that new guy is watching me. That weirdo. Maybe I should report him for being un-American or something. Un-American? I nearly laughed, but we stayed silent. Let her dig her grave. An hour later, one of her runners arrived, young guy, maybe 25, nervous energy. Karen handed him a clipboard. Make sure these get out tonight. No screw-ups. If this shipment gets traced, I'll sue your mother. He nodded and backed out. That's when we moved. Flashlights cut through the dark. My voice rang out, cold and hard. Federal agents. Hands in the air. Don't move. Karen screamed like a banshee and dropped the clipboard. The sound of plastic hitting concrete echoed like a gunshot. You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I stepped out of the shadows. Helmet off. Calm as ever. Hi, Karen. Her face drained. She blinked like the world had flipped upside down. You? But you're just a homeowner and a federal agent. I flashed my badge. And you just helped us bust a counterfeit trafficking ring. She lunged forward, hysterical. I didn't know what was in the boxes. They just paid me to store them. I thought it was yard sale stuff. One of my team members chuckled. Sure. Designer bags. From Shanghai. In factory-sealed crates. At 3 a.m., Karen crumpled into a shrieking mess. Tears, spittle, makeup streaked like bad war paint. You're finished, she hissed at me. You're ruining my life. I raised an eyebrow. No, Karen. You did that all by yourself. As we led her to the waiting transport van, neighbors started coming out. Porch lights flicked on like fireflies. Someone gasped. That's Karen. Another whispered, Is that Homeland Security? Then the floodgates opened. I told you she was shady. She once fined me for putting my garbage out too early. She made my kid cry over chalk drawings. Every grudge, every petty citation, came pouring out under the streetlights. Karen sat there in the back of the van, stunned face pressed against the tinted glass, watching her kingdom turn against her. But here's the twist. The real twist. She wasn't the kingpin. No, she was just greedy and dumb. And being dumb, she talked. A lot. We flipped her. In exchange for reduced charges, she started naming names: bigger fish, her supplier, the offshore accounts, even a customs officer she bribed 3 times at Dulles. She gave us everything. But don't think for a second that meant she got away clean. Because the HOA, they held a meeting the next week. The HOA meeting that followed was packed wall to wall. Every neighbor showed up, even the ones who never bothered to attend before. People were furious. Not just at what Karen had done, but at what she'd cost them. Turns out, her little side hustle had put the entire neighborhood under federal scrutiny. Insurance premiums spiked. Deliveries got delayed. Several families were investigated just because their addresses were within proximity of a known drop site. The board voted unanimously to remove her. No one even needed to debate it. But then came the real blow. The HOA itself filed a civil lawsuit against her. damages for reputational harm, legal fees, and the collective financial impact from her crimes. Karen tried to fight it, of course she did. She showed up to the hearing in a discount pantsuit and cried about how she was manipulated and mentally vulnerable. The judge didn't flinch. He handed down the HOA's civil judgment and then turned to the federal charges still pending. She wasn't walking away, not from any of it. By the time it was over, she had lost her car, her house, her fake friends, and even her little rescue poodle, Muffin, who went to live with one of the neighbors she once fined for cluttered decor. And me? I still live here, quietly, peacefully. The grass gets a little long sometimes, and my truck's still too big for some folks' taste, but no one says a word now. Not after Karen. She was the storm, but we were the thunder that followed. And if there's one thing I learn it's that karma doesn't knock, kicks the door in. Thanks for listening. If you want more stories where lawsuits fall like rain and Karens get what's coming, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.